Hi, everyone, and welcome back. By now, you know it's Tuesday, it's noontime, the second day of summer, and it's also the Maine Take. You also know by now that we look to explore those issues, ideas, initiatives, and basic information, as well as the people behind each and every one of those issues and ideas. Today we have an exciting program for you. The first part, we're going to take a look at where we stand in the legislature, what's next, and the impact of what needs to be decided. Then we're going to turn to a very exciting initiative that was just, the awards were just announced in early June. It's called LaunchPad, and we have a person, Katie Bellerose, who was an inspiration behind that program, on to discuss the concept as well as the winners. We also have our regular, Peter Van Allen, who's here to share with us another positive story that's taken place in Mainebiz this week. And I'll finish it up with a short reminder of what we've seen on the program today. So let's start with our advocacy team. By now, you know who they are. They're probably your neighbors, as a matter of fact. They're Peter Gore, who handles our HR. There's Ben Gilman, who handles energy and utilities, environment, natural resources, and workforce. He's also the president of our foundation. And we also have Linda Caprara, who handles those tax issues as well as keeps an eye on appropriations. So let's take a look at what lies ahead. They come out of the legislature on, well, it was intended to be the 16th, but ended up being late on the 17th and perhaps a little early on the 18th. And then they moved to what will take place next Wednesday, the 30th. It's referred to as Veto Day. It's the day in which the governor takes a final look at those issues, those bills that have been passed. Either she signs them and lets them become law, or let them become law without her signature, or she may reject them, the veto, if you will, which goes back to for final disposition with the legislature itself. There's a lot to be taken up on Veto Day. It's not just vetoes for this year. It's a whole lot more. And here to talk about us are your regulars, our advocacy team. And Peter, why don't you kick it off and give us a sense of what lies ahead on that important day, the 30th.
Sure thing, Dana. Well, for starters, they're tied to two things: process, as you've touched on, and also workload. Process in that you have a number of bills that still await final disposition. Some of those bills are on the appropriations table and they require funding. Some of those bills have gone to the governor since the legislature went home on the morning of probably early morning of the 18th. And the 10-day countdown has begun, and the governor needs to decide how she intends to handle some of those bills. And as you indicated, she has essentially three options: sign them into law, let them become law without her signature, or veto them. And as you know, a veto, in order to override a veto, the legislature has to have 2/3 in both bodies disagree with her actions. And that's a fairly tall standard. And we also know, and we've talked about it previously, that there's a lot of bills that there's a lot of partisan votes on a lot of different bills. So how it all shakes out is unclear. So they're going to have to deal with the vetoes, bills that, you know, she decides to reject. They're going to have to deal with the final passage of the biennial budget, the supplemental budget, excuse me, and how to deal with the America Rescue Plan funds. And then they're going to have to, when all that's done, they're going to have to sit down and deal with the appropriations table, amend bills they want to go forward, kill bills that they don't want to go forward. And then 10 days from that point, they're tied again to process, where the governor is going to have to decide what to do with that batch of bills that reaches her desk. So it's process and it's legislation both.
So Ben, followed by Linda, give us a glimpse into what some of the issues that you believe will either be in those bills needed to be decided or subject to vetoes.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. And that was a great update from Peter on the process. And I want to take my time to highlight 5 bills we hope that we have to deal with again because they've been vetoed by the governor and that they have to go back through the process on June 30th. And 3 of them deal with project labor agreements. There are 3 project labor agreements that were passed by the legislature one dealing with renewable energy, one dealing with the development of offshore wind, one dealing with the development of affordable housing in Maine. And real quickly, project labor agreements essentially say that the only people allowed to work on a project are those that are signatory to a labor union. And in Maine, that would mean that over 90% of our construction companies would not be allowed to work on those projects because they're not signatory to a labor union. And so all three of those bills would hamper our economy and eliminate competition within the marketplace here in Maine. And we have a lot of concerns with them. We're hoping the governor agrees with that and does veto those three bills that were passed by the legislature and sends them back for them to either override or to uphold her veto, which we'll be working hard to do. One is LD 1231, dealing with renewable energy, passed the Senate by a 17 vote by 1 vote margin. So we know a veto could be sustained on that. You know, renewable energy, solar, wind in the state of Maine, it's really important that we have as many contractors as possible working on those projects. Similarly with affordable housing, we're looking with the American Rescue Plan funds to spend over $100 million on affordable housing in the state of Maine. They did attach a project labor agreement onto that legislation, which would restrict who could work on that, on getting affordable housing built here in the state of Maine with state dollars. So we're hoping that one gets returned to the legislature. And on top of that, the last one is LD 336, dealing with offshore wind development here in the state with a similar disposition. The other two bills that we hope to see again with the governor's veto returned to the legislature is one is LD 920. This deals with streaming services in the state of Maine and the regulatory structure of classifying those as a public utility and a whole new regulatory scheme on, you know, things like Netflix, HBO Max, Peacock channel, things like that. The reason why we're concerned with it is not necessarily the regulations, which will increase costs, which is a problem, is that it may limit, you know, the people in the state of Maine, their access to those, but increase their costs up to 5%. So if you're a bar, a restaurant, or a hotel coming out of the pandemic and you offer cable or streaming services, now's not the time that you could afford increased costs for those bills. So we're hoping that bill is returned to the legislature. And the last one that we're really hoping that the government vetoes is LD 1541, dealing with packaging. This is the bill that sets up a statewide recycling program here in Maine to help municipalities. We agree there's a recycling problem, but we don't think the solution is one that the solution is the one the legislature came up with, of establishing a fee on all products at the producer level that will end up being paid for by the consumer. There was a study done out of Canada that shows that the average family of four, this would increase the cost of their monthly grocery bill by $50 a month. Coming out of the pandemic, we just don't think now's the time. We do think the recycling program is a problem. We need to deal with it, but this is not the solution. So we're hoping those 5 bills all get in the juxtaposition of a veto and the legislature upholds, though. Only time will tell, and we'll know on June 30th. I think you may have a bill or two, Linda, as well. So
yeah, there are about 4 tax bills we're watching very closely on the special appropriations table. One is LD 730. It's the Pine Tree Zone Development Bill. This is the bill that we had initiated. Maddie Daughtry sponsored it. This would extend the sunset date out 2 years. So we support this bill and hopefully it will be funded. LD 229 is the Maine Seed Capital Tax Credit Bill. This bill would restore the annual and aggregate tax credit investment amounts that were reduced a few years ago and grandfather those investments that were approved by FAME prior to April 1 of 2020. So we support that bill as well. The other bill is LD 1713. This is a refundable tax credit for Maine's paper industry. This bill would basically provide a 4% tax credit over 10 years. And it would be a company would have to be headquartered in the state, would have to have over 400 employees and pay X amount of dollars in wages, and basically not be eligible for Maine's New Markets Tax Credit Program. The limit on this is $15 million per company, up to a total of $40 million for the entire credit. So those 3 we support. We're watching those. The one that we don't support is LD 966. This bill was turned into a resolve to study the Maine's tax policy and its impact on working families and small businesses in Maine. And the reason why we don't support this is they left out 2/3 of the business community. They left out medium-sized businesses and large businesses and the impact on that. But irregardless of that, we firmly believe that Maine's the Joint Standing Committee on Taxation really should be looking at Maine's tax policy. It shouldn't be a working group made up of folks. The committee should really be looking at the overall tax policy for the state of Maine. So that's where we are on that. We're watching those 4 bills. We oppose that last one, but we support the first 3. So.
Yeah, and I should point out to any and all of our viewers that this is just a snapshot of the bills, the issues that we'll be dealing with on the 30th. The other areas that Pete mentioned deserve consideration in a more positive way. The supplemental budget brings our educational funding to 55%. As well as revenue sharing being restored for municipalities in the next 2 years. Both of those are important features of the supplemental budget. It is under consideration by appropriations right now, and there is a real cordial relationship that appears to be developing. So it's possible to have a 2/3, which puts it into being immediately. The other issue is also what Peter referenced. It was the $1.1 billion America's Rescue Plan, the governor's version of jobs and recovery for our state. That encompasses so many positive things that will help our economy. It reflects the strategic plan, the work of the Economic Recovery Committee. It deals with everything from transportation to childcare to broadband to housing. There's some good stuff in that. That too will likely be finished, agreed upon by veto day. And in fact, that's what we're hoping. That too, as a 2/3 to go into effect immediately. So let's leave it at that, knowing that we haven't spoken about what lies ahead for the next session, only on what it looks like for the 30th or the very next day. But also, as Peter pointed out, not to be lost on us, this is a session that never seems to ever want to end, because whatever those bills are in limbo that have not been decided, depending on what the governor does, if she vetoes them, there will be yet another veto day. So that's the story as we see it today, as we look at the legislature and what lies ahead. But know this much, that this session has been a challenging one, and it looks like the next session will be as well. So what has led us to this point is our ability and our willingness to work with others to provide the information that's needed, and we'll continue that pledge. So thanks, team. You do a great job, and we're very pleased that you're again with us today to bring our viewers up to date on our State House news. Thanks. Take care. Now it is my pleasure to turn to the second part of our program for today, and it's a real pleasure to introduce again Katie Bellerose. Katie is a commercial loan officer. Katie is assistant vice president. And as much as anything, she is the inspiration, although she's modest and probably won't admit to that, but from all indications, she is the inspiration behind the very program, the LaunchPad program that we're about to discuss. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me today, Dana. It's a pleasure.
It's our pleasure. Actually, it's an interesting concept because just the word itself, LaunchPad, indicates that it is something there to help businesses grow, to actually launch into the next stage. So tell us about, it was created, what, in 2013, June 1st, you had your competition this year, but tell us more about the program and how it was developed.
Certainly, yes. So LaunchPad was created about 8 years ago in 2013. The bank wanted to do something to support our small business community, recognizing that they're what really essentially makes us run. That's why we're here. So we're here to support them and vice versa. So we wanted to create a splash in the entrepreneurial community, and we wanted to have an event around that, a live event. So the idea came about as sort of a Shark Tank, like, if you will, but on Maine local scale. And we had our first event in 2013. We had applications submitted on our website, and we had a live pitch competition where the finalists pitched for a grand prize. Then it was $30,000, but we've since increased the final prize money to $50,000.
Yeah, I commend you and Gorham Savings Bank, because It does. When I learned of the program and came to know the process a little better, it does sound like Shark Tank. I mean, it's kind of modeled after that very thing, giving people a chance, an opportunity to tell their story. Because this year, as I recall, you had 150 who applied, and every one of them had a chance, at the very least, to tell their story and to get it out there where people can see it. So it's a wonderful concept. Tell what those applicants that were actually, I think you narrowed them down to 5. Talk about that process, because it is a competitive process and a lot's expected of those 5 who made the top list.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a panel of preliminary judges who select the 5 finalists. So they weed through the almost 150 applications and kind of just digest what the business is about. We're looking at, how they're going to use the funds if they win. We're looking at, their scalability, their contribution to the Maine economy, whether it's job creation or bringing production in-house in Maine versus other folks who tend to go out of state or out of country even. So it's a pretty intensive process, and we're really grateful to our judges that are able to review those and whittle it down to 5. It's very challenging, I will say.
Yeah, but even with those 5, is it true that they have to make their final presentation to also a panel, just like on Shark Tank, and from that someone is selected?
Yeah.
I think I heard you also say that how they use the 50,000 is pretty flexible. They can use it for whatever their needs are to grow into the next stage, if you will.
Yes, they do. There is another panel of judges at the live competition. And so the 5 finalists, they make a 5-minute pitch presentation, kind of like they would on the TV show we're familiar with. And that panel of judges has some time where they can deliberate and pick the ultimate prize winner. And they do have to be able to show tell us how they're going to use the funds, but there is, like you said, quite a deal of flexibility. A lot of folks go based on, they're buying a tangible piece of equipment that they can increase production for their company to really scale up. Or in other cases, it's this year, for example, the winner, High Bite, is using the funds to bring in and attract additional talent to help grow their workforce into the future. So it's pretty flexible.
Oh, that's great. So with that, and we have a picture on the screen showing the High Bite winners, but talk a bit about, actually there's 3 awards, 3 categories: the LaunchPad, the Emerging Business Award, but also, is it the Agility Award? Talk a bit about each of those and who actually prevailed as winners in each of those.
So as I mentioned, High Bite won the $50,000 prize. It's cash. It's to help them, launch and scale their business. And so they're actually using the funds to supplement what they had already budgeted for. So it's a little different use of funds than what we've seen in the past. But our judges really felt that this company has a lot of potential for growing jobs in Maine if this company can continue to grow. And we felt that LaunchPad was kind of that platform to help, get them to the next level. So they're actually planning to use the prize money to help attract tech talent to Maine with more competitive salaries to grow their team from 9 to 16 by the end of this year. And then the second award was for the Emerging Business Award. And we've been doing that for the past few years. We're really kind of focusing in the preliminary judges select this candidate who is really not quite ready to, be able to put the $50,000 prize to use, but they have demonstrated through their application a lot of potential. And so we give them a $10,000 cash prize and also in-kind services from partners of the bank. Our creative imaging group, which is our printer and producer, our marketing firm, Grove Marketing, iBet Creative, who's our web developer, Philbrook PR, public relations, and also Provoke. So getting some branding experience, if you will, there. So it's really kind of a well-rounded, yes. So there's the ladies from Sea Love Cookie Project. They have an existing business, actually. They just launched a baking academy, a class a couple weeks ago, and they're basically trying to help others get into the baking industry. And so again, we're seeing a common theme here, these companies that are wanting to attract talent and try to kind of grow the space that they're in our Maine community. And then the last prize is that we developed this year strictly because of COVID. We're not going to do it again, let's hope, because hopefully we don't have another 2020 repeat. But it's a Business Agility Award, and this was awarded to Zootility of Portland. And we wanted to do this for a company, an applicant that recognized them for outstanding perseverance related to the pandemic. We saw a lot of businesses step up to the plate. A lot of folks did some, pivoted to making face masks, for example. This one was really unique. Zootility is a manufacturing company. They recreate everyday items to be more useful, like as their pocket monkey is one of their most popular products. But they pivoted in COVID they designed a contactless door opening gadget. And that quickly became their most popular item. And, like I said, a lot of businesses had to pivot this past year. And, we did this award this year to just acknowledge the environment that we were all facing. And so that was, just kind of a $10,000 to somebody that we wanted to give kudos to for really stepping it up during the pandemic.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful commitment that the bank and all of you at Gorham Savings Bank actually demonstrate. There is value not only in the cash that's given, but it opens our eyes to businesses that probably many of us didn't even know they existed. Once again, reinforcing the entrepreneurial spirit that exists in the state of Maine. It's like no other state. If there's an idea, you can expect it to develop and be seen commercially here in Maine. Your program illustrates that. Fantastic. Great job.
Thank you, Dana. Yeah, and I'll just add that throughout the last few years that we've been doing this, it's really opened my eyes to all of the organizations and players in supporting Maine's entrepreneurs. It is such a vibrant economy, if you will, in itself. Yeah. We've been able to, so fast forward a few years now, I work with small businesses on a daily basis, helping startups. And the first thing that I point them to is, go get a SCORE mentor, go get a small business development advisor. They offer free services to help you hone in on your business plan, hone in on your projections, because ultimately, if they want to have financing someday, that's really what they're going to need to present to a bank when they want to apply for traditional financing. And you figure there's other players such as Finance Authority of Maine, and we do a lot of partnering with the SBA guarantee programs and loan programs. So, real huge kudos to the little organizations throughout Maine that are helping support Maine entrepreneurs. It really does take a village.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It is so, I think, inspiring to know that in times of challenge like the pandemic has been, the very words that you use and examples that you shared right now, once again, whether it's in good times or bad times, there's something in the spirit of Mainers that bring us together and make things happen. And that's a gift. And so isn't your program. And we're so grateful that you're with us today and able to share all of that and as we say, keep up the great work. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks for having us, Dana. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. And now we're going to turn to somebody who always has good news for us, and that's Peter Van Allen. So from Mainebiz, who he happens to be an editor there. So Peter, what's good for today?
Thanks, Dana. Thanks so much. It's just so interesting hearing about LaunchPad, and that's something that's it's always been a core to what Mainebiz covers is LaunchPad and the programs similar to that. This kind of pitch contests are always really interesting. Well, I was going to bring up a new bank on the scene here, not a new bank at all, Chase Bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank, they're known as here, at the retail level, opened the first of what they plan to be 5 branches in Maine. So the first one's in Portland, and they have other branches planned for Westbrook, Yarmouth, Falmouth, and Saco. So this is kind of interesting. I mean, Maine's already got a pretty crowded banking field. There are 30 commercial banks doing business in Maine. The largest, of course, plus credit unions. I mean, there's, we're not limited to banks, but the big market share is still, a TD Bank is still our leading, bank presence here, followed by a couple of Maine-based banks, Camden National, Bangor Savings, and then we have Key Bank and Bank of America. And I should add, both Camden and Bangor have kind of risen up in that ranking in recent years. They have much, kind of more of a broad presence. But the Chase Bank, I mean, we've seen this so much with banks coming from northern Maine into southern Maine, or banks coming from outside the market. People really want to be in that kind of southern Maine market, and they're after the. I mean, they're opening retail branches, but they're after the commercial business. And they're also after the wealth management business, and Maine's got a lot of retirees that they'd like to tap into. They're also tapping into existing customers who maybe they're customers in New York or other markets and have some presence in Maine, or they're retiring in Maine. So this would be kind of interesting to watch how the competition unfolds with Chase now coming into this market.
Well, and there's another message in all that. They wouldn't be seeking presence here if they didn't think there was an opportunity here in Maine as well. So that's a message not to be lost in all of this discussion. And by the way, driving down Main Street of Falmouth, it's pretty hard not to take note of their presence there, because it's a big building that they're planning to get.
That's right. Yeah, the building that's going up. That's right. It's going to be that'll be a major presence, a brand new branch. So yeah, it'll be nice. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Peter. Once again, we welcome your participation, because you always bring us things that we should be grateful for, and such as you did today. So thanks. Look forward to seeing you back here next week.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, that leads us to our takeaway for this week. And I hope you agree with me that this has been a program full of a lot of good information, needed information. And I think we're all aware that when we think back on the LaunchPad and what Peter had to say, that we are very fortunate in Maine that we have businesses of all sizes, of all types. But we also know, we have come to know, that Maine is a small business state. 80% of our businesses employ fewer than 20 people. And yes, Maine's economy is increasingly boosted by entrepreneurs, by startups, and innovative businesses like we heard Katie speak of today, or Peter, and creating the conditions, providing the programs to help those who have the will to try to provide the programs and the conditions to ensure their success is exactly what Gorham Savings Bank and Katie had in mind when LaunchPad, Emerging Maine, and this year Agility was begun. LaunchPad in 2013, Agility, as I said, just this year. On June the 1st, as Katie mentioned, from 150 applicants down to 5 who competed live before judges, there emerged a winner. Hyde Bite was that winner, And for their efforts and for their story, they received $50,000 to put towards their growth, their next stage. In addition to that, we had the Emerging Business Award. That went to Sea Love Cookies Project. Cookies for a Cause is how I describe it. And they received $10,000 in cash, but an additional $10,000, as we heard, to go towards those in-kind, those marketing opportunities. And certainly the unique this year award, the Agility Award, went to Zootility because of their unique, their persistent and preservation efforts and response to the pandemic was remarkable. And for that, they too were awarded $10,000. All of those awards recognized and supports ingenuity, creativity, and clearly the entrepreneurial spirit by celebrating the best of Maine's small business. And indeed they did. Congratulations to all who applied, to certainly the 5 finalists, and most notably to the one who received the $50,000 high bite. But also our congratulations goes to Emerging Maine, Sea Love Cookies Project, and also Zootility, because clearly those were deserving and they make a difference in our lives here in Maine. So we thank them, we appreciate them, and we certainly thank Gorham Savings Bank for their vision, as well as this initiative that you've heard about today for recognizing and appreciating the best in Maine. The heart and soul of our economy is the small business. And by recognizing the entrepreneurs and the innovators behind those businesses is certainly very special. They had the will to try, and we're grateful that they did. And I think, remember this, that you don't have to be amazing to start, but you have to start to be amazing. And that's what Gorham Savings Bank has done by these programs, is to celebrate some pretty amazing people and their companies. With that, I thank you all for attending. I thank our guests for today. I thank our sponsors, and most of all, I thank all of you. Look forward to seeing you right back here on the Maine Take next Tuesday. In the meantime, be kind. Be kind to yourself, but also be kind to one another. Until Tuesday, have a great week. We'll see you later. Take care.